The best cow your family ever raised is walking out of your yard on a rope, and the man pulling it is not a thief. It is dawn. Your children are watching from the doorway. Nobody calls for help because everyone in the village knows what your family knows. The rope is his, the right is his, and all of this is legal. Somewhere in a written custom, that animal was already his. Your family had simply been raising it for him. Across 13th and 14th century England, unfree families lived inside a list of things they owed the lord of their manor: their time, their grain, their beasts. The cow was only the last line. And watch the gate. Behind the man with the rope, another hand was waiting. Your first instinct is to blame a king, some crown somewhere, squeezing the poor. But the king never saw your cow. He didn't know your village existed. Now do something for me. Think of the end of this month when you open your banking app and look at your pay. Before you reach the number that is yours, you scroll past the lines that were already taken. Tax, insurance, deductions with names you barely read. You have lived that small, sinking feeling. A medieval family lived the same arithmetic, except the collector lived up the lane. The ledger was a manor court roll, and the running total was cut into a wooden tally stick, one notch per debt, kept where everyone could see it. The machine was local: a lord, his steward, his court, his list. So the real question is not who was collecting. It is how many lines were on that stick before they reached the cow. Line 1 on the stick was your time. On the manor of Elton, a family holding a vergate, about 24 acres, the land that fed them, owed the lord 2 days of work every week from late September to the 1st of August. Not on their fields, on his. And here is the detail nobody warns you about: the number was not fixed. At Warboys, tenants owed 3 works a week through winter and summer, then 4 as autumn came, then 5 in the autumn itself. Read that again as a farmer. The Lord's claim on your days grew exactly when your own harvest stood ripe and waiting. Custom governed the hours too. Summer service ran the whole day, in Lent until mid-afternoon, and if the Lord wanted you longer, custom made him feed you dinner. Your exhaustion had a menu attached. Harvest brought the boon works, written down as gifts, days given freely to bring in his crop sweetened with the Lord's own ale. A gift you could not decline. And if you fell sick, some manors excused a sick tenant from services, up to 30 days at Colne and Somersham, but not from the harvest boons, not from the plow. Illness could cancel your work. It could not cancel his. One notch, cut deep, and the stick was only getting started because the next line was waiting at the mill. Line 2 was cut at the mill. You could not grind your own grain at home. The mill was the Lord's monopoly, and every sack you brought came back lighter. The miller kept a share for his lord, the mulcher, commonly somewhere between 1/13 and 1/24 of your grain, measured out sack after sack, year after year, forever. Families did the math and quietly ground at home anyway, and the court noticed. At Great Waltham in Essex, the roll records a fine of 6 shillings taken from several tenants, in the court's own words, because they did not grind at the earl's mill. Then came the lines with no harvest attached at all. Inherit your father's land. Pay the Lord an entry fine before you could hold it. The Lord needs money this year. Tallage, assessed because he said so. Keep pigs, pannage for every animal you loosed among his acorns in autumn. And now comes the part nobody talks about. In 1356, at Bulphan, a tenant paid 6pence for a license, not to hunt, not to trade, not to build, to live somewhere else. Even your absence had a price on the stick. Grain, inheritance, pigs, the heir of another village, notch after notch after notch. And still, everything on the stick so far was about things you owned. The next line was about things you were forbidden to touch. Line 3 was different because line 3 could run. Meat moved through your world all day, a hare crossing the field you plowed, rabbits grazing the edge of the wood, and none of it was yours to take. The right to hunt small game was called free warren, and only the king could grant it. Your lord held it. You did not. The hare was the crown jewel of the warren, and the law around it was not casual. At Somerton in 1257, a hare was found dead inside the royal warren, just found dead, and the court summoned an inquest from 4 neighboring townships to establish what had happened. Men convicted of taking hares went to prison and bought their way out with fines. 1 dead hare. 4 villages questioned. So families hunted the way people hunt when hunting is a crime. At night, with a ferret wearing a muzzle so it could not eat the catch, sent down into the burrow while nets waited over every exit. Some villages even hired the ferret. Meanwhile, the Lord paid a full-time warrener good wages to stand guard over rabbits, because on the stick of the manor a rabbit was property and your hunger was not. Every line so far a family could pay and survive. The last line was different. It was reserved by written custom for the best thing your family owned. Now you know enough to stand in that yard again. The rope, the dawn, the man who is not a thief. The custom he is enforcing has a name, Heriot, and it sits in the written record of manor after manor. On the day the head of the household died, the Lord had the right to the family's best beast. That is the entire trigger, one line in a court roll, and it is why the steward is here on the worst morning this household has ever had. Best beast meant exactly that. The strongest ox, the milking cow, the horse, whichever animal the family could least afford to lose. The court rolls record them by name and animal, entry after entry. Some lords took coins instead. The animal was worth that much. So the first half of the cover is paid. Your lord took the best cow. Now watch the gate, because the second hand belongs to the parish. The church held its own death duty. The mortuary and one 16th century lawyer defined it with total honesty: the best beast of the dead man's cattle. Then reality intervened. The parson usually settled for the second best animal for one simple reason: the very best was already owed to the Lord. The church was not merciful. The church was second in line, and that is the second cow. The cover of this video has now been paid in full. So how many lines were on the stick? Count them the way the family counted them. Days every week on the Lord's fields, a count that rose to 5 exactly when your own harvest stood waiting. A sack that came home lighter from his mill, and a 6-shilling fine if it didn't go there at all. A price for inheriting your father's land. A price for the Lord's bad year. A price per pig in autumn. 6pence just to live in another village. A hare that could put you in front of an inquest, and a rabbit guarded by a salaried man while your children watched it eat. And then the last line, the one written for the worst morning: the best beast to the Lord, the second best to the parish. Here is what that list actually was. Not chaos, not random medieval cruelty. It was accounting. Every claim written in custom, enforced in a court, cut into wood, one notch at a time. The machine never needed to be angry with you. It only needed the list to be complete. In one Hertfordshire village, the record even shows the queue bending. The parson stood third in line, behind the Lord and behind the widow. Even on the last line of the stick, a household could still fight for its place. And when spring came, the family did what the list knew they would do. They started raising the next best cow, already knowing whose it was.